I would like to make some announcement. We are approaching the scheduled starting time, but in order to make the necessary preparations, we'd like to delay the starting time by 5 minutes. I'm sorry that we kept you waiting, but we would like to promptly begin the Commission meeting, and I have a couple of housekeeping announcements beforehand. Concerning the simultaneous interpretation service, the channel numbers are Japanese is channel 1, English is channel 2, and Russian is channel 3. Today, the witnesses will be making presentations, and they will show PowerPoints on the screen. And during that time, we would like to darken the room, and we would like to have your approval beforehand. We have set up the screen at very short notice, so some of you might find the screen difficult to see, but please do excuse us. Concerning the presentation materials, since we received the materials immediately before this commission meeting, we couldn't come up with copies, and please refer to our website later on. So I'd like to give the floor to Chairman Kurokawa. So we would like to begin the 7th Commission meeting. Today, we have the councillor, Professor Hatta, with us. He is a macroeconomist, and he is, after being the president of GRIPS, he used to be the boss, and he specializes in public policies, and he's the honorary professor at the moment at GRIPS. So, with regard to this 7th Commission meeting, we have speakers who have traveled a long distance. We have 3 experts from the Ministry of Emergency of Ukraine, and exactly 25 years ago, last year, there was an accident experienced in Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and he would talk about the latest situation and what were the subsequent countermeasures which have been taken. 26 years ago, the accident occurred in Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and the units of the reactors differ between Chernobyl and Fukushima, and the nature of the accident may be different, but they both belong to level 7 according to the International Nuclear Accident Scale, and therefore the level 7 of Chernobyl is exactly the same as that of Fukushima, and there was a very large release and fallout of radiation, which impacted a large number of population in their livelihood. The enlargement of damages and the expansion of contamination. There were damages being inflicted on the lives of the peoples as well as on the farmers and agriculture, and they came up with a great deal of wisdom. Of course, there was the end of the Cold War, and there was a disintegration of the Soviet Union since then, but what were the actual measures that have been taken on the ground? I'm sure that this will be very informative for us here in Japan, and we have asked these 3 gentlemen to join us as witnesses. I would like to give a brief introduction with regard to the 3 gentlemen. Mr. Volodymyr HOLOSHA. So as it is mentioned in his CV, he was closely involved with regard to Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and he assumed a very important post in terms of the government of Ukraine, especially with regard to countermeasures taken at Chernobyl. And Ministry of Emergency of Ukraine, also the Vice Minister of the People's Ministry, and now he is right now head of the Agency of Ukraine for the Exclusion Zone Management. The second speaker is Mr. Leonid TABACHNYI, and as it is mentioned in his CV, so he has been assuming various posts with regard to Ukraine as well as the Chernobyl nuclear power plants in the various official organizations. And he is currently in the Central Geographical Observatory belonging to the Ministry of Emergency of Ukraine. He's the Deputy Director of Monitoring and Technology at the moment, and he has assumed various positions in areas related to the emergency at Ukraine. The third witness is Mr. Anatoliy GORA, and after graduating from university, he has been consistently involved in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And currently, he is the Deputy Director General of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So it is a valuable opportunity for us to receive wisdom learned from practical experience, because they have all been involved very closely in the public policies of the government of Ukraine vis-a-vis this accident. Of course, we are under physical constraints because we don't have a big screen to benefit all of the audience, and we lack the time to make the necessary preparations. But I do sincerely hope that the PowerPoints which we use for presentations today, the Japanese version can be translated to English, and the Russian version can be translated to English, and then so there are three languages being used, and there are simultaneous interpretation. So first of all, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Anatoliy GORA. He will be the first speaker. Mr. GORA, may I first give the floor to you. So we have experts as witnesses who will be making presentations, and with regard to the presentation materials, since it was the last minute that we received the presentation materials, I do promise that at the earliest possible later date, we will put them up on our website. So Mr. GORA, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Japanese side for the possibility to share my opinion about accident in Chernobyl NPP. I came to Chernobyl NPP in '86 and worked there for 36 years, been working there since then. As you all know, Chernobyl NPP was launched in '97 and stopped in 2000, in the year 2000. The staff of Chernobyl NPP, me and my family, lived in the city of Pripyat, which was specially built to accommodate the staff of NPP with all the comforts of modern civilization. Unfortunately, on 26 April of 1986, there was misfortune, tragedy. There was an explosion of the fourth reactor of Chernobyl NPP. On the April 26th, me and my wife has been working on the fourth reactor, and we saw it with our own eyes how the developments happened, and participated in the liquidation of that accident. After an explosion, a big territory around NPP, and not only around NPP, was contaminated with radionuclides, radionuclear materials. There were necessary efforts of 600,000 people to overcome the first phase of overcoming that accident, and to build the sarcophagus, which is known all over the world. That was the first phase of liquidation of the accident. Population of Pripyat city and my family were evacuated, and we lived in the small villages, temporary villages. Before we were provided with the accommodation in the city of Slavut, which was specially built for that purpose for the population of Pripyat city who were evacuated from Pripyat. You see here the destroyed reactor photo. That's what I saw with my own eyes on April 26th of 1986. The building of sarcophagus, it has been built for 206 days, and it was finished in October in 1986. But because building was very difficult under radiological conditions, and we had to use distant control mechanisms, and construction of sarcophagus was built on the columns which were destroyed by the previous. There were some risks remained of destruction of that sarcophagus and emission of big amount of radiological dust in ecology, and which could badly affect the population around the city. So after that, we started realizing the second period with the help of international community. We created a special plan of measures. The country donors helped us to organize fund, to collect money, mobilize money, which are necessary for the works to be conducted. For the second period, those funds, we needed over 1 billion euro. 1 billion euros was necessary for that. And now we are in the final phase of fulfilling of that plan. We are building new, safe containment vehicle, which will be built on some distance from destroyed reactor, and then we will move it over. So we'll have two covers for that reactor. On the new arch, we will have possibility to disassemble non-stable construction units, and further on in the future we will be able to take highly radioactive elements from sarcophagus, and we will bury them later in the special facilities. I would also like to add that it's very important. It's very important how you treat people. As I said already today, humans is the strategical resource of the country. But even at the most terrible technogenic catastrophes, using the experience in the world which we have by now, it's possible to remain healthy, and it's possible to normally build families and to live very close to those places where those catastrophes, disasters happen. And as a demonstration of that, my participation in today's press conference, I'm already 58. During the last 5 years, I ran 6 international marathons. It's 42 kilometers, 100 meters each. I have healthy children and healthy grandchildren, and I hope that my private personal experience and experience of my colleagues will help better understand to Japanese population what is possible, be overcome together, and still remain healthy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So we would like to hear out the 3 speakers before addressing the questions. Thank you very much, Mr. GORA. So now I would like to call upon Mr. TABACHNYI. The floor is yours, Mr. TABACHNYI.
I must find my slides. Thank you.
In my report, I would like to mention different aspects which are maybe common to Fukushima accident on Fukushima power station, power plant. First of all, I would like to compare Fukushima and Chernobyl power plant accidents. That's the scale. This scale been confirmed by international community as a 7th category of accident on the power plants, 7th level. The main difference between these two accidents, that nuclear reactor in Chernobyl was completely destroyed, and the content of this reactor in fact lost all defense system, whatever it is, nuclear or radioactive defense. There was a huge release of radioactive material from a reactor building, and it went into their environment. Now, about 3.4% were released, according to modern assessments. That's radioactive nucleus and fuel were released from the 4th reactor of Chernobyl power plant. The scale of this accident forced the government of the USSR to take special measures to protect the human health after this accident. And the criteria was has chosen a maximum permissible dose, which the population of this area could be affected as a result of using the radioactive products which were released from their nuclear reactor of Chernobyl power plant. As we know that Japanese government also put forward criteria for those criteria in order to protect the population of Japan from the consequences of this accident. The first years after this accident in the Soviet Union, there was a coefficient between the inner and outer radiation. The outer radiation, which affects the human's health from directly from environment, which is a fallout or many others, whether it is on the ground or in the air, in atmosphere, and inner radiation, which is which will go to their human health together with products, different products, food, and also the inhaling the radioactive materials from the air. So the next criteria for the protection of population was connected of the permissible level of foods radioactivity level in the food which were produced in the areas around Chernobyl power plant. In Ukraine, there were several normative documents published which were regulating this point. In 1986, the Ministry of Health of the USSR created the first permissible levels of containment of radioactive nuclides in the food products. Here we have data only regarding the cesium-137. It's connected to that 97% of population after the Chernobyl accident was influenced by that very cesium-137 in environment. The content of it as its main, as it was considered to be the main radioactive nuclide in the content of environment. 20 years later, we got new rules. You can see that new codex was created that you can see in the very end of this table, and the list of the products, of course, much bigger, much longer than it's put down right here. Here we can just have the main food products, milk products, meat, vegetables, fats, and separately it's child's baby food, child food. And here we can see the regulations which were recommended by international organizations. It's called Codex Alimentarius for their international trade. You can see it's completely different from the criteria which was put forward in Ukraine as a regulation of this. In Chernobyl, unlike in Fukushima, the release, we had not only the volatile elements, but also we have medium volatile elements, intermediate, and hard volatile elements. This is not secret data. This data was many times published in different scientific works or in mass media and newspapers, and you can check it there. I just would like to mention that after Chernobyl accident, in the environment, as for population of Ukraine, the main element which was released is cesium-137 and strontium-90, which as for today considered to main radionuclides content in the environment. It's different from the first days after the accident. This data had changed. Besides, in the environment, basically within the no entry zone, 30 kilometers no entry zone, there may be more than 10,000 years would be still very high activity of trans-uranium elements, which, for example, like plutonium, And there's also Amirit state 241. So usually in a nuclear reactor, the level of it is pretty low, but because half-life is more than 200 years or more, so the concentration in environment will be increasing, and it is still increasing and will be increasing with the years. The spread of the release out the territory of the power station was basically huge. You can see here that almost 50% of cesium-137 is a main element of the release, the most toxic radionuclide. You can see it's over 800 kilometers from Chernobyl power plant. Over 800 kilometers. Only half of their cesium released went to Ukraine, Belarus, and Russian Federation. Right after the accident on this, in the territories which were affected by this accident, the deactivation works started. In order to decrease the influence of radionuclides release on the population. The first stage was taken part just inside the power plant in order to create the shelter, the sarcophagus, right on the fourth reactor. So that first stage finished when the sarcophagus, which was mentioned before by my colleague, and then deactivation was spread into the territory behind, which goes around the power station. That include the territories, the roads, the land. So the deactivation was also done in the schools, around schools, in different public facilities. 10,000 kilometers of the roads were deactivated during this process. By the beginning of 1990, this deactivation was taken part more than 60 cities, towns, and villages. Uh, 439 cities in the Kiev and Zhytomyr areas, and for that the special points of deactivation waste was created. Just on the Kiev, Zhytomyr, and Chernihiv area. In general, we have 46 points like that, centers, which is under a special control service for the deactivation of these areas. During the fourth stage also, we have deactivation of different cities, towns. We have a special technical projects which were designed in advance, and also it was concerning the places where these works took part. One of these was the city called Korostan. That's the biggest town, it's the biggest town where the population could reach, because of the work in this town. We made a conclusion as a result of it that the work of such kind in the town conditions are not really effective. Usually that people think that one person sievert per person, which was saved, it's same like GDP per person for the state. In Korostan it was $1 million per person, the result of this work. There are no countries in the world which has GDP per capita per person in the world, so it's really hard to do that. Of course, we're not able to protect population without constant monitoring of the environment objects.
And dispersion of radionuclides on the territory of Ukraine. And this slide you can see from 86 till 2011 decreased this area of territory with the corresponding levels of contamination. In general, by twofold. For cesium and strontium, about which we'll talk, which are the main dose creating. Isotopes of plutonium are concentrated in the exclusion zone. The all area with critical levels is less than 2,000 square kilometers. And the exclusion zone is 2,600 square kilometers. Working on studying the nuclides, gamma-emitting radionuclides on the territory of Ukraine. The works on this was started with the help of remote control methods. The most effective of them is aero gamma taking pictures. The first works on studying contamination with this method on the right side of Ukraine were conducted in July of 1986. They were determined the main hot points, because one of criteria was of criticality of territory was of a level of 15 curie square kilometers on cesium. In 86, in 87, only works were conducted only in exclusion zone and adjacent territories of Kiev and Chernobyl and Zhytomyr regions. In 87, 88, studies were increased to other part of right side of Ukraine. And by 1994, those works also covered the whole Ukraine, which allowed by 98, 12 years after accident, to create very detailed map of contamination of the whole Ukrainian territory. Based on those works, it was that 85% of Ukrainian territory was the contamination level with radionuclides of cesium was increased compared to normal. Which was higher than the result of nuclear tests in atmosphere before that. Monitoring also took into consideration those budget which were accepted by population. It should be mentioned that the level of contamination of territory affects people in different ways. Here on this chart you can see that the level of that in 86 the level of radiation exposure just after accident was at the village, which is about 100 kilometers from Chernobyl NPP, was 106 millisievert per year, reached that level. When average was, which average would be about 9 millisieverts per year. Unfortunately, the territory which were close, which were about 200, 300 kilometers from Chernobyl NPP, were covered by monitoring only much later. On the example of the village which was like 300 kilometers from Chernobyl, you can see that dose of radiation that was not much in 88 was not much less than it was in 86. And the average would be also the same. It was connected mostly with the fact that that territory was characterized by a special type of soil which was more adaptive to absorbing radionuclides. And from that soil, the radionuclides will come into food chain much faster way than in other territories. Of course, all objects were controlled of agriculture subjects and also those in the natural environment, like animals, flora and fauna. Here on this slide you can see the change of the level of contamination for fish in the Kiev water reservoir from 1986 to 2000. The level of contamination decreased by 10 times. Because Chernobyl accident was the accident of which heavily affected agricultural production and areas. Of course, the main direction of works was prophylactics and protection of population. It was the task was to minimize of radionuclides in agricultural product. And here you can see that for different types of soils, the ratio of transfer of radionuclides was very much different. Northern parts of Ukraine, in the northern parts of Ukraine, there was big territories covered by so-called pit soils, To the south from Kiev, dominating are black soils. and they're characterized by very low level of dispersion of radionuclides from soil into plants. With the same level of contaminations, the difference of transfer factor, they are higher by 10 times, depending on the type of soil. So here you can see two lower lanes, rows. The difference with radioactivity level, depending on whether it's food is from the pit soil, food is from pit soil or from the black soil. Every year, radiological services of agricultural districts, they control hundreds of thousands of objects of agricultural production. It's vegetables, fruits, meat, milk. And if you compare them with the normative limits, which determine the radionuclides in the foodstuff, which is can be accessed by people, by population, can be used by population, you can see that during 3-4 years, the quantity of contaminated food decreased by 3 times and continues to decrease. That was the result of countermeasures adopted and conducted on the agricultural lands to limit the transfer of radioactivity, first of all, to the plants, planting products, and also to the animals, milk, meat, and so on. Whether we want it or not, we cannot overcome the issue of medical results of Chernobyl NPP. So we have many evaluations of scale of results. The world community, scientific and medical world, doesn't always agree with the conclusions about health of Ukrainian population, Belarus, of Russia. But what is accepted by the whole international community is that, of course, there was that Chernobyl accident affected, for those who were liquidating the accident, those people who in 86 and 87, 1986, 1987, deactivated the territory, cleaned the debris from industrial sites, were building sarcophagus. According to estimation of modern medicine, today those people are mostly affected by different kind of disease. For example, they were estimated and calculated the possibility of oncology disease, different type of cancer. And for those who participated in the liquidation of accident, those figures are decreasing, the expected real figures. They are exceeding for general for general oncology by 10%, for thyroid cancer 5 and 6 times, for women who participated 1.5. The second category, which also affected, was children were affected, of course. data from epidemiological studies show that children that compared to the control group, children affected who lived on the contaminated territories or were irradiated during the first days after the accident, before evacuation from heavily contaminated territories, the difference is maybe 2 times and more times. They more times often become victims to the sickness than control group. And especially you can see it on the thyroid gland diseases, morbidity. When we evaluated what part of children can be considered practically healthy, that among those children who were irradiated with the thyroid gland 0.3 gray, only 25% of such children were. With those who were irradiated, whose thyroid gland suffered, healthy children could not be found at all. It's not only diseases of thyroid gland as a result of radioiodine. It of course changes in how they consume food and live, how they eat and live, and so on.
And in the end of my report, I would like to inform you about the Fukushima consequences were reflected on the territory of Ukraine. In Ukraine, according to regulatory document of the security, they were regulated the level of content of radioactive nuclides in the air, in the atmosphere. We saw the signs of Fukushima accident in Ukraine just for about 1 month in the beginning of March, just right after that, in the second half of March, right after the accident. And the level of iodine in our atmosphere were higher. That was the first time since Chernobyl accident. But it still was 1,000 times lower than our regulations regarding iodine content. Cesium 137 level was more or less on the same level. The level of it was more or less the same. So this report is based on the materials which were published in National Report of Ukraine called 25 years anniversary of Chernobyl catastrophe, the security for the future. This report you can read on the website of our ministry in English version. You can see here the address of our website right here. If you have any questions just to me, please, you can go to a Central Geophysical Observatory. This is a website right here, the address of website. And electronically we can contact each other if you would like to and discuss the questions which is of interest for you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tabachini. So I would like to call upon the third last speaker, Mr. HOLOSHA.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My colleagues in great detail discussed several aspects of Chernobyl accident. That's why I think I have to make few results of that messages which were put by my colleagues. I would like to make some conclusions. What are the difference from our point of view? What the main difference is between the Chernobyl accident and Fukushima accident? And here you can see on this slide, as was mentioned before, there are few points of the differences. Why both events has the seventh level of inner scale, but they are the difference. They are. First of all, there's a big difference that as for Chernobyl NPP, the reactor there was an explosion of the reactor. That's why the whole radioactive materials which were in this reactor, about 3.5% of the reactor core was emitted into atmosphere, released into atmosphere. As for Fukushima Daiichi plant reactors, though the reactors' buildings were damaged, the reactor core was untouched, and the only volatile radionuclides were released into atmosphere. Volatile radionuclides. From the point of view of consequences on the long term, we may speak that the situation is easier in the future during the process of the liquidating of this accident. Next difference, main difference, I should say, that the meteorological conditions results and that the Fukushima Daiichi power plant was on the Pacific Ocean shore. The release was accumulated basically in the Pacific Ocean. That's why the less part of radionuclides release to Japanese archipelago and continental Asia. And the third difference, which I would like to mention here, it's important from the point of view of localization of their accident consequences. As for Fukushima, the reactor vessels and confinement structure was damaged, but they were intact. That's why to localize and isolate it would be easier to use them. This is allowed to use them, and and so the reactor vessel and reactor containment would be less than it was in Chernobyl, to compare with Chernobyl. I would like to mention a few things about the structure. That such huge accidents it needs special government level decisions as for the management and liquidation of their accidents like this. As for Ukraine, the first years after the accident, there was a special ministry which was dealing with the problems like that. In the parliament, there was a special parliament committee, the Parliament of Ukraine, special parliament committee, and there was a budget for a special budget was created for liquidating the consequences of this accident. Now there is a modern structure of our ministry of MOE of Ukraine. We have a special decision-making organ there, which is coordinated by the minister, but it's a separate person, and he is responsible for the liquidating the consequences of this accident in our Ministry of Emergency of Ukraine. And Ministry of Emergency has, of course, more tasks. For example, as regarding for Chernobyl catastrophe, we have it here, put it right there. I show that with my pointer. Mr. TABACHNYI works in the structure of hydrometeorological department of our ministry. And my last slide here. It's very important to inform the population in time regarding the situation which is in the affected areas. Our experience shows that very quality information, right information, has a very huge importance for the population, and it's also influence their health, because the stress situation doesn't bring any good to their health. That's why, according to our laws, we have the statement that information of the consequences of Chernobyl catastrophe accident must be provided to the population. We have periodical passportization or certification of the areas affected. Then this information is published electronically or in newspaper, in media. We also have centers of social psychological rehabilitation for the population, which are located in the big areas like Kyiv and Zhytomyr regions. There are 5 cities, towns, They are basically the center of information and the policy regarding the Chernobyl accident consequences. And in conclusion, I would like to mention that the technical aspects of their Chernobyl accident consequences liquidation are very important, but the state policy in Ukraine, the policy of the state of Ukraine, first of all directed into the medical aspect, social aspect, and a radiological protection of the population suffered from Chernobyl accident. And here I would like to conclude my report, my brief report. We are very much obliged for their ability, for that chance to be here with you. And we also would like to invite the members of the Honorary Commission to come to Ukraine in order to compare the situations which you have right now in Japan and the situation which we have right now in Ukraine. We think that it will help you in your work. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So we have heard from 3 witnesses who are extremely knowledgeable and who have been deeply involved in the aftermath of Chernobyl accident, as well as in the government of Ukraine, responsible for the response. And they have been working on the ground in the field, and they have been closely involved in the countermeasures. And we can learn a great deal from the 3 witnesses, as far as I am concerned personally. Based on the information that has been provided, we want to think in terms of the outlook for the distant future. So we would like to begin the question-answer session. The 3 witnesses have talked about the situation on the ground and the countermeasures and the sarcophagus after 25 years. There is a new sarcophagus which has to be created. So, and so we have 26 years elapsing from the occurrence of the accident. So there are long-term measures which have to be taken here in Japan as well. But after the hearing about the Fukushima Daiichi accident, what was the first impressions? So Mr. HOLOSHA, could you respond first? Mr. HOLOSHA, could you respond first? First impression from Fukushima accident.
Когда мы получили информацию, конечно, первое, что было сделано, были наши службы гидрометеорологические и службы радиационного контроля предупреждены о том, чтобы они осуществляли контроль за выпадениями радиоактивных осадков, радиоактивных, так сказать, радионуклидов. Это первое. Что касается ситуации на ядерном объекте, на станции Фукусима Дaiichi, конечно же, мы понимали о том, что ситуация будет достаточно тяжелая и последствия будут достаточно тяжелые. То есть мы в первые дни понимали, что это, скорее всего,
that they won't be limited by fourth level. We understood by the 4th level of illness will be probably surpassed.
Thank you. Please.
During accident, I wasn't working in the system of hydrometeor service. Okay. The first which we understood was that that contamination will be, just as in Chernobyl, will cover the whole world. And we were getting ready to what kind of scale it will be. So what kind of radiological masses will reach the territory of Ukraine. We were conducting daily until 2011, till the March. We decreased the levels of monitoring because such kind of accidents didn't happen for a long time. But from the moment of accident, we increased the frequency of those monitoring and made so we can see, if necessary, to tell people about danger, and also our power structures from the governments, what kind of danger can be expected connecting with the, if there is such a, there is danger with the contamination from the air atmosphere. Fortunately, I showed it to you today, the phone wasn't very high. The first, my impression when I didn't know the details about Fukushima accident, I was surprised, feeling of being surprised, because when it happened in Chernobyl, the catastrophe accident, we knew about critical attitude from Western countries to the construction of Soviet reactor, which, as you know, had constructive flaws, yes. For me, Japan was highly technological country, and I know very well that the Japanese engineers do their job with very high quality, using the newest technological advances. But unfortunately, there were two events happened: earthquake and tsunami. And due to such combination, nobody is insured in such cases. But this double hit was very difficult to withstand for construction. It proves that studies in building those nuclear dangerous objects should be continued. The culture of security, of exploitation of such objects should be increased to avoid that kind of events in the future. And of course, together with this information, because I went through the whole accident in Chernobyl, I wanted to participate, to take part, at least with my experience, with my advices, with my help with such a unfortunate, to help Japanese people to overcome this accident with the least possible losses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then we'd like to receive comments from other members of this commission, please. Then Mr. Sakurai, please. Thank you. My name is Sakurai. I'm a member of this commission. I would like to ask some questions in relation to the residents who were affected by this accident. As was mentioned by Mr. Gora, you mentioned that you also had to resettle to a different location after the accident. Now, the then USSR government back then, after this incident, they of course instructed the residents to evacuate. But I wanted to ask some questions about the instructions provided by the government for evacuation. Now, there was initial round of evacuation, then there was subsequent evacuation. And 1 week later, residents within the 30 kilometers radius had to be evacuated. Can you tell us, based on what reasons, why the government instructed the residents to evacuate in different phases? Thank you.
Decision about evacuation was made by a governmental commission, state commission, because Mr. Tabachnyyi has already showed that there were two phases of that decision. First was practically about evacuation of the near located in 1986, two phases, and the second was in April and May, and we evacuated from the territory of Ukraine. Evacuation mainly happened on the territory of Ukraine because mainly suffered the territory of Ukraine. 90,000 people were evacuated. After that, the consequence, after we find out about radiological situation, and after 1991, we are not talking about evacuation, but removing people. Quite substantial number of families were removed. Families with children were relocated, resettled, and in general, after accident from the territory of Ukraine, were evacuated and resettled over around 60,000 people. The government created temporary houses, and after that gave them maybe 2,000, 300,000 places for resettlement, including the city of Slavutich, which is quite a big city. And those families afterwards, they received their permanent residency. And speaking about children, to children for rehabilitation in 1986, they were sent in the summer period from those regions which were not subject to evacuation. I mean, Kiev region, Zhytomyr region, but also regions which were contaminated. So we sent children to the pioneer camp, summer camp, to the Klinkl, but they were not evacuated. Though those people, in places where people live purposely for summer period, children were sent to summer camps. That's what kind of politics we pursued. I want to say that, to add, that first decision about relocation from Pripyat city was April 26, on the day the accident happened. It was clear that city was 3-4 kilometers from nuclear power plant, and PP should be evacuated. And the level of contamination became higher and higher, and because accident didn't reach its end, and emission stopped only on the 6th of May. So emission happened from the destroyed reactor. So situation on the territory of 30-kilometer radius zone changed very dynamically. By 30th of April, Med Service of the United Union created the map of contamination within the 30-kilometer radius zone. I was talking about three zones: zone of no entry zone, zone evacuation, and heavy evacuation. No entry was about 30 kilometers from NPP. The decision, all this, they were resettled on the 4th and 5th of May. After 5th, 6th, and 2nd of May, decision made to resettle all the communities because accident was still in the process. And not knowing what will happen, the government made decision to resettle all the people from that 30-kilometer zone area. That was the consequence of events, evacuation, in the first days during after accident. And to make conclusion for my colleagues, me and my family, 6 people, parents, 2 children, me and my wife, we received big flat in Ukraine, in the city, in the Kiev, capital of Ukraine, big apartment. And then when the city of Slavutich was constructed, built, where staff of Chernobyl and PP lives now, me with my wife and 2 children resettled there, moved there to work on Chernobyl and PP, and my parents, they're on pension, they are living now remain to live in Kiev, and distance between Kiev and Slavutich is about 180 kilometers. So government of Ukraine constantly took care about its main resource, its main strategical resource, its people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a follow-up question as well. You talked about soil and environment in this region, including decontamination. What kind of measures have been taken, and what is the degree of effect from such countermeasures?
I would like to mention, first of all, about the first measures which were taken right after the accident in 1986. There were several attempts to deactivate Pripyat, which is just the city near this NPP. We made some measures, these attempts to return back population to this city. Still we gave up because their contamination level was still high, and that's why we decided to build a new town, Slavutich. So in 1987 the Slavutich was built up, and the places in the no entry zone, evacuation zone, where was temporarily presence of the staff, of the liquidators, and you see that the 3 reactors were keep on working right after this action. Then all these places were deactivated, and as over the no entry zone there was deactivation of the towns. But unfortunately, the measures were not very effective, as results showed. But in general, we consider that the works which we're doing, of course, in the populated places, which is kindergartens, schools, cultural centers. As for agricultural objects, our point of view that we tried the deactivation work there, and priority in this case we think is some melioration. For example, there are different methods to increase the quality of the soils and proliferation agricultural products. For example, so there are different like seed producing or technical cultures, agricultural cultures. So just to give up on these soils to make any kind of agricultural production and just move it to a different area. So in general, that's the picture. There are different nuances, but it depends on the land scales and other conditions, what kind of soils we have here, and in each specific case we should take into consideration this. But as general picture is, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. I want to ask about health and food. After Chernobyl incident, as time passed, I think health impact began to emerge. Or have there been cases whereby health hazards have emerged after the time has passed since the accident?
As I mentioned, that international community now keeps the position that after the accident, that the health condition of the liquidators and children who were affected by the radiation was getting worse. Of course, we provide special help to in order to improve the population health. Different measures are taken, but at the same time, I would like to mention a very important thing that that contamination was in areas which is basically agricultural areas. There are woods. Let's say that this territory, that medical points were very scarce, very rare. So there were no medical services on these areas because they were not populated. So that's why we didn't have a general picture what was happening on that area. But after the accident, we made dispersalization. We every year we are conducting a complex of analyses of different diagnoses, procedures regarding their state of health, including the blood tests, X-rays, other medical measures. When there's a medical research, medical services will be dispersed on the 100% of population. Of course, that's the situation. Was not like right after the accident, 1986 or 87, but it was developed and it is still developing, the medical system. So that's why, of course, 100% care was not in 86, 87. Probably we can say 100% care was started in the middle of 1990s. So with full medical services for the whole population. That's why that assessments before and after accidents would be completely different. Of course, there would be not positive. It's very difficult to measure this, all these aspects. That's why I say in the civilized countries, the medical personnel, they are doubting the assessments which are produced by Ukrainian medical researchers, unfortunately. And that's why we can say that that the result of the accident influenced the state of health, but also we should take into consideration the natural aspects of the human health with the age. So of course we need a long effort in order to find out the influence of the consequences of this accident on human health. I shouldn't, I probably have to remind that the system, the USSR system of the healthcare was different. This accident really depressed people. Many conditions had changed since that time. There are many facts. I would say that the condition of the human health was not improved. That's the fact. But what are the reasons? Right now, it's really hard to give an answer. That's why, children who were influenced by this accident, they suffered basically to great extent.
If I may, we all hear about the thyroid cancer, but what about other tumors outside thyroid cancer? Do you believe that other types of diseases and other types of cancers outside thyroid cancer has increased as a result of this accident?
Our medical workers see different, any systems. This is nervous system, blood circulation system, basically all human systems, human body systems were influenced, were affected by the results. Of course, it's influenced the blood creation system too. All human organs could be damaged by the influences.
Well, the children, they have become adults and reached the age of pregnancy, and the children of those who worked with regard to decontamination, I hear that there are health hazards and damages being experienced. May I ask you a question about this as well?
I should say that some abnormal levels, which are over the general level of the birth given age, given the birth to the age of giving the birth, we don't have. The children who are born in the second generation after this accident, let's say the children who were born 1986, now they are parents, age of parents, and so the children who were born from them, they are some abnormalities. We can see some abnormalities among children who were born from the parents who were influenced by their accident. But I should say it all needs a very, very deep research. So only statistics says that there are facts of such cases, but we need more research in that, definitely. Did I address your question?
Thank you very much for that response. Now, in the Ukraine, I think towards children and pregnant women, you have carried out various programs to maintain their health. So how have you pursued health control programs for these people in the Ukraine?
Well, it depends on the medical level service of their local areas. For example, we are far away from the level of Japan, but all scientific methods which were in the USSR, we are developing them in Ukraine. So these researches are being developed. This regarding the blood, the whole system of human body, physical and chemical methods of research. I already mentioned that earlier.
No, not necessarily those people who are residing in the contaminated area. The white body counter, WBC, are you conducting tests on the children on the WBC? You're not doing a nationwide testing, but only in the evacuated area.
Today I showed on the slide, maybe you can see that since 1986 on the Ukraine territory, after Chernobyl accident, we have a regular research and study of the contamination level with this. Well, I showed you that documents regarding Veliki Kristy, Kozic. All these data were taken by this. We have a dosimetration certification. It's a kind of dosimeter, right? So we have dosimetric certification, and it includes also the measurement of products, food products, and also that it's using the dosimeter of the human body. So everybody who moved from the no entry zone to different zones, they all checked. So on the fourth zone of the strong control, maybe once in 5 years. And as for the population of the whole Ukraine, such research study were being fulfilled only if it's necessary, or if somebody would like to have it himself. So, for example, he can come up to a medical service facility and said, I would like to get measured by this system.
Thank you. Now, I think this applies to children in particular, but education about radioactivity. How do you carry out education in relation to protection against radioactivity among children?
Well, I have to say that at the end of 90s, beginning of 2000s, European Commission realized some projects with the participation of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, with the participation of scientists, medical workers, scientists, and they created a series of documents, books, brochures, pamphlets, which were intended to become textbooks for school children, with illustrations about what is radiation, what measures should be taken in case you live on the contaminated territory, what should be done if suddenly happens, nuclear accident happens. Children, and those documents were disseminated among children. Besides, on the contaminated territories, there are several centers of social psychological support for the population. Other kind of clubs where everyone can come in and to talk with psychologists, radiologists, have consultations with them on this or that matter which he or she is concerned by. And in such centers, very often children would come. They have special circles there. In those circles, they study during role games. They find out about effect of radiation and how to avoid it on contaminated territories.
Thank you very much. I have another question with regard to food products. So on a product-by-product basis, do you have thresholds or standards in terms of upper limit? And it's very good for human health. But what kind of system have you set up for inspection of food products?
We have a quite wide network of laboratories, especially in agricultural districts, which help to farmers and farmer collectives to determine the level of contamination of this or that product which they produce. On all milk, dairy, on all processed milk, meat processing, there are radiological laboratories which determine the level of contamination. On the incoming product which they receive from farmers, and on the outcoming products which they produce by this or that plant. Besides that, in the cities, in the city of Kiev, for example, on every market where agricultural product is being sold by private citizens, farmers, or people who on their private lots produce something and brought to sell it, to sell this product, meat or more, gathered something in the forest, berries of. So veterinarian, there is a special laboratory. No one who brought products, food from agricultural area doesn't have the right to sell his product unless he is certified by this laboratory about level of contamination in his or his.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I would like to add one little detail, considering additional costs for radiological control on plants which process products, given that is given cost, additional cost. In government and state budget, there is special program for that purpose. It supports. It's not so that the cost of products wouldn't be very very high compared to those produced in the other region. So the budget support that kind of production to make it not very expensive.
Thank you very much. My name is Koichi Tanaka. I'm a member of this commission. In Japan, in particular, people living in Fukushima, even 1 year after this accident, are forced to continue with the evacuation. But it's not just themselves. Many people here in Japan have a very strong sense of anxiety as a result of this accident. So in terms of physical and in terms of psychological stress, it has been enormous. There has been enormous stress imposed on the Japanese people, because I'm one of the people who also feel a sense of anxiety. Now, turning to the Ukraine, it's been 25 years since the accident. Now, of course, as was mentioned by Ms. Sakiyama earlier, she talked about her concerns earlier, but the direct health hazard or the health damage as a result of this accident, I think there is also a risk that stress could cause illness. If there have been such cases, if stress has caused illness, if you have concrete cases, I would appreciate your sharing that with us. And more than anything else, even if that were the case, have you practiced certain preventions to mitigate the possible risk? As you mentioned earlier, I think you have the rehabilitation centers. You also talked about the summer camps, and also you talked about the appropriate disclosure of information, which alleviate the anxiety on the part of the people. But aside from those measures, have you taken any measures to prevent possible diseases caused by stress? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. But to answer it shortly, I would say that we have the whole network of so-called radiological specialized medical organization which serve to the people who suffered from as a result of Chernobyl and PPE. It's not only in Kiev, but in every regional center which suffered from Chernobyl and PPE. There are special medical institutions. They give special medical treatment for suffered population on radiological factor. Speaking about effects on the health on population as a result of stress connected with the resettlement or evacuation or living on the contaminated territory, there is special scientific works which support and prove that that kind of stresses incurred because of that instances of stress state, they negatively affect the health of and leads to the somatical diseases. Such publications exist in the scientific medical literature. And social, psychological services, the medical services, they note that in some cases, radiophobia, so-called radiophobia, and stress condition leads to the negative effects on the health. The level of such effect should be considered in each case differently.
Yokoyama. I want to shift the subject to agriculture, about the overall situation. For Ukraine, agriculture is considered to be an important sector. And you talked about radioactive contamination and decontamination. But on the whole, what are the policy measures in order to revitalize and revive agriculture, and whether they are going well, and what policies are going well?
Well, I can say that successes are gained in the first years after accident. In 88, 92, there were broad measures on processing of agricultural lands. You remember that Soviet Union was that all collective enterprises where production was grown in the western regions. They was specially treated to decrease the absorption of radionuclide in the agricultural products. Big money were invested in that. Quite big money, and big territories were treated. And that also was reflected in the fact that already in 92, effectively from industrial cities from Ukraine on processing plants, not 1 kilogram or kiloliter of milk was sent with contamination exceeding acceptable level. With independence from Ukraine, the level of governmental support decreased substantially by factor of tens. Today, the state finances some program of help for agricultural workers, farmers on contaminated territories. First of all, of course, on the territories which have pit soils, about which I was spoken today. So money is being spent for that, and to reorientate those agricultural enterprises for livestock and they give them special food for agricultural for livestock, and those foods they absorb radionuclides or decrease their level in the milk if it is the case during the process of production of milk. In case of meat, they give them clean food from the not contaminated territories. They bring not contaminated forage, and before those animals are sent for the distribution, they are fed with a special clean forms. And the last trimesters, well, of their life, they spend on the clean feeding grounds. And today, money are being given to private owners who have cow. They give them feed with ferricin to decrease contamination by radionuclides in their milk. But only if, those who are not professional farmers, but who have a cow for their private. So we also were talking about the kind of money we're talking about are not very high, but they help. So certain farmers receive help to realize that kind of programs. Yeah, but also would like to say that wide-scale or events on melioration of lands or reprofiling of were very important in the first year, till the beginning of the 90s, of the 1990s, till 1995 on Ukraine, when we had wide-scale measures. But afterwards, because area of contamination became smaller, and the program became a kind of received a kind of point character on a small territory. Feeds were and corresponding methodology was involved to come from milk livestock to meat livestock.
Thank you very much for that information. With regard to dairy livestock, yes, I understand your response. Now, Ukraine is also a very famous grain belt or a farm belt. So what about grain? Have you taken any special countermeasures in relation to grain products? For example, have you changed the type of grain produce that you produced in the Ukraine as a result of the accident?
I should say that we have problems in the black soil areas. What kind of problems is that the products are contaminated? We don't have problems like that now. There are problems where we have is only areas with northern Polessia. They're peat soil and other without any mineral soil. So there are some specific measures have been taken. So for example, we move from milk production to meat production. We also add combi feeds that with additives, chemical additives to reduce their level of radionuclides. There are other countermeasures being taken to reduce the level of contamination of the soil and the products, especially the northern area. In the south of our country, we have black soil, so we really don't have problem. Also, we don't have a problem about the grain cultures. The cesium and strontium has a very little level, so it's lower than admissible level, these radionuclides. So we don't have problems in the grains. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have another question on the overall situation. Depending on the circumstances, there are evacuees, and many farmers had to change the type, variety of crop, and many farmers had to evacuate and had to resettle in other locations. What kind of compensation is being provided by the government of Ukraine to those who have suffered?
So the relocation was over during this process was over during the Soviet period, but the compensations for some families and people are still being paid up to now. Usually compensations are given for each tree which he is growing on his personal land, or because he has to left a house or some other objects for business. So, for example, they were given a land. Let's say he got 1 hectare of land before, then he will receive in a new place 1 hectare, and they build new house. But really, the process of relocation in a big scale was over during Soviet time. Please understand that the agriculture really with farms started after 1990s, so during the evacuation scale, the scale evacuation, it was a system of collective farmers, a Soviet-type kolkhoz, sovkhoz, so that in Ukraine it was still during the Soviet collective farms, but after 90s, when the economy structure has changed in Ukraine, so there became a new system of giving people land lots, but people already were relocated during this time, so they will just receive that land lots. It was not a real problem for us because of these differences between the Soviet time era and after 1990. Thank you.
I see. So how do you certify that? What about the procedure involved? Was that done in a very smooth fashion, do you think? I'm sure that you received many requests and demands from the people, but were there any problems pertaining to the certification of the damages and compensation?
Yeah.
I would like to underline that when it was a huge scale relocation, there were no farms, private farms. There were no farmers, there were no private farms. So they just moved to a new place and they had their personal land, very, very small area, very small land lots just near their house. But there was not a problem, this because it was all collective farms. But after 1990s, let's say in 1994, 1995, when people received their land to make their personal business, they moved from evacuation zone before, so they would like to relocate to move to a different place. So in this case, the local authorities will take care about it. They will see all the reports or any papers presented by the person, and then they will move them to a certain area. But again, I would like to underline, during a huge scale evacuation or relocation, there was no problems like that because the system of economy was different. Thank you.
If I may shift the subject, with regard to contamination of the environment, radioactive contamination may become lower with the passage of time, but depending on the contamination with the passage of time, are there some expansion of the scope of contamination?
Just
No, we didn't have cases like of cesium or strontium level increasing in the years. NAIIC 241 level, but it's only in no entry zone. In other areas, it's also regarding the plutonium 240 or 241. We found it not only in no entry zone, but in other zones. But again, it's not having the critical level, so we really don't have any kind of radical measures being taken because it doesn't affect the health of people. I also would like to add here that no entry zone, what we are talking about, it's evacuation zone. That's no entry zone, meaning evacuation zone in our case. That's what my colleague just mentioned.
Now, there has been perhaps contamination of the forest area. in contamination of forest, radiation falls on the leaves. It starts out with the leaves, but then subsequently it drops to the ground. There's a fallout on the ground, and the fallout could be absorbed by the tree. So contamination taking place in forest could be a very slow process. That's what I heard. So what about your thoughts on the possible forest contamination?
The process of like that we could see a few years after the accident, but about that the leaves of the trees, whether it is evergreen trees, finally fall down, and so this problem was after about 5 years after the accident. It was already transferred into a different state. Yeah, in the woods, we have a higher level of the upper soil level. That's true. It's existing still because the half-life is long and migration is pretty low. So how it is influenced? First of all, the products like mushroom and berries, which are in the trees, and the population may gather berries or mushrooms and may use it for in their food. So in Ukraine we have a special research. We have a test grounds how the radionuclides. We study how the radionuclides affect the trees. It's behind the no entries zone. So we have a regular monitoring of radionuclides moving into the branches, into the leaves, into main body of the trees, and the wood which is being grown and then used for purposes of construction, let's say, or something. There we have a special regulation, we have a special control on that we are not allowed that in case if there is a contamination level was found in this wood, we cannot use it. And so there's special services, special authorities which are controlling and regulating this point.
Contamination, is the degree becoming higher compared to the past, or do you observe that contamination is being reduced with the passage of time?
I should say, in general, as was mentioned, the first years after the accident, the contamination is taken only the bark and the leaves of the trees. But with the years, this factor decreased. Maybe we still have a little bit on the bark, but in the woods where the soil is untouched, so through the roots, the radionuclides getting into the body of the trees. But it's not serious contamination, I should say. So the closer we are to power plant, Chernobyl, then the contamination is higher. But in the case of the areas where population is still living, not on the entry zone, that there is no problem with contamination level. Maybe in the food circuit of the local population there, mushrooms, berry, fish, wild birds, something like that. So we have special regulations regarding this, but we can't control that food circuit of the population in order, because we're controlling no more than 1 millisievert per year as a result of the accident of Chernobyl accident. So it's we have very strong regulation regarding the milk and meat, because in the food circuit, there is a additional dose which comes from the woods with berries and mushrooms. So that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oshima, please. Thank you very much, Madam Ms. Oshima. I'm a member of this commission. First of all, thank you very much for sharing with us your very valuable experience, and we appreciate your information. Now, some of the members here in early part of April intend to visit your country, the Ukraine's. And when we visit your country, we hope to learn even more from you, and we would appreciate even more information on that occasion. Now, I just want to ask one question about international cooperation. From the perspective of international cooperation, let me ask this question, if I may. Earlier, as was mentioned by Mr. HOLOSHA at the outset, the Chernobyl nuclear accident, power accident, and the Fukushima nuclear power accident, there are similarities but also differences. I think that's what you mentioned between the two accidents. But in any event, as far as Japan is concerned, we have to pursue how to address this Fukushima nuclear power plant accident. And the Chernobyl accident will be of great reference to us as we deal with the Fukushima nuclear power plant accident. Now, from what I have heard, I understand that the two governments are now working to create some sort of an arrangement or an agreement going forward. Now, based on what I have heard from you today, the government of Ukraine, what would the government of Ukraine seek from Japanese government in a way of cooperation? What cooperation would your government like to have from the Japanese government in the light of the Chernobyl accident? So what cooperation do you think would be of use in this particular case?
Thank you for your question. Speaking about international cooperation, there are three aspects I would mention. You know that as former ambassador, you worked in United Nations. United Nations, the system of United Nations, EIAA, they helped after Chernobyl accident, supported to countries who suffered, Russian Federation, Belarus, Ukraine. First, methodological help, also in the system, on also humanitarian aspects was covered by that help. Government of Japan itself, as one of the countries which understand the burden of that events, also extended humanitarian help to Ukraine. And we are very thankful. We remember with great thankfulness about those times. Thanks to the government of Japan and people of Japan, which was extended to us. Speaking about our efforts, what happened when happened accident and infection, we offered our help with our experts and humanitarian also help. There were specially teams created who have experience of working under such conditions, and we offered to Japanese side our help as humanitarian, like dosimeter devices, and with experts, team of experts. And now there is an intergovernment agreement, which we framework in studying and helping in liquidating the effects of between government of Ukraine and government of Japan. The agreement will be concluded, and within that framework agreement, there will be a special bilateral agreement, which will deal with experience of liquidating of consequences of nuclear power station itself. We stopped NPP long ago, and there also will be agreement about rehabilitation of territory concerning agro-industrial complex. Of course, it should be included by all means. We have big experience in that sense, and we can methodologically help with experts and normative materials. We probably will be also study the experience of monitoring of food stuff, the network of radiological services, dosimetrical passportization, certification, medical consequences, basically all the questions which were covered today by Commission, which were answered today. It's possible because in Ukraine there is scientific organizations, institutions, and governmental structures and people who quite knowledgeable and worked a lot in this area in the liquidated consequences of, and I hope that in April, during visit of our minister, the agreement will be signed, and based on that signing, there will be specific agreements will be covered and determined with the corresponding organization, both from Ukrainian and Japanese side. That's my general answer to your question.
Thank you so much. Allow me to raise another question. In terms of information disclosure to the people, that is considered to be crucial, and you have explained to us that particular point. In the case of Chernobyl nuclear power plant accident, it would happen during the times of the former Soviet Union government, and the government was accused of concealing facts in the initial stage after the Chernobyl accident, which invited the distrust from the Soviet people. And after the independence of Ukraine, the government of Ukraine has made tremendous efforts to disclose information to the public. And liberal and open information disclosure has been much stressed in your efforts. And you have explained this point to us. Nowadays, in terms of the Ukrainian people's level of credibility vis-a-vis the information that is being disclosed, do you think you have regained their trust? There are still 16 nuclear power plants in operation in Ukraine, and it is providing a large share to cater to demand for energy, and therefore, what about the level of trust of the people towards information pertaining to nuclear power generation? Do you think you have regained the confidence and of the trust of the people of Ukraine in order to further improve upon the level of their confidence? What kind of measures do you intend to take?
Very good question, Mr. Oshima. You visited Chernobyl not once, and you know pretty well that it's a very difficult theme, speaking about information policy in the area of informing population about catastrophe, accidents, and so on. It's true. Trust from the population to the official information and to the government information was undermined by things which happened during Soviet times, which for the first information about accident and scale of accident was limited or was just hushed down. And then people anyway find out about and by unofficial channels of information, and it didn't increase trust for the government. Situation in Ukraine is relatively, information is by law, the law envisages transparency in informing population about radiation situation in communities, by quality of products being produced. They were mentioned already. Annual monitoring is conducted, and digital radiological passportization data is published in electronic and paper hard form. people have that information. The map of contamination is also published. But we understand, you and me, that for the common person it's very difficult to make difference in the specific information, Curie, Ziver, Becquerel, because it's quite expert knowledge. That's why it's important that information should be understandable for the people, and those advices which are given for population about how to behave, how to conduct their business and agriculture, and it should be accessible by wide circles of population. It is one of the main part of our state policy to return this trust which was lost, and that is reflected in our laws, and it's supported by finance in our budget. I have already spoken about Central of Social Rehabilitation in communities. In smaller communities, with the help of, it happens with the brochures, pamphlets, TV, radio is engaged for that purposes. Speaking about the second part of that, trust to nuclear energetics, because in Ukraine, apart from Chernobyl, we have 4 NPPs, apart from Chernobyl. The situation here is not very easy, it's not simple one. In general, Ukraine cannot right now do away without nuclear NPPs, so we'll continue to exploit our NPPs, which we have on our territory, and in the nearest, at least in the nearest future, we'll use them, exploit them. Speaking about what population reaction to that, to nuclear energetics, energy, the situation is 50-50, if to say 50% support population, 50% are against it. Well, and don't trust to the usage in the future of nuclear energy. But I'm speaking about that there are special laws in our country which, in case of placing nuclear objects this or there, it requires a wide discussion of local communities in making decisions. There is the whole complex of measures which should be engaged in under such circumstances. Situation is not a simple one. Trouble requires attention all the time and work, but unfortunately in Ukraine we in the nearest future cannot afford to do away with the nuclear energetics. We cannot just live without it. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much for this information. Now, this is a question to Mr. Gora. Mr. Gora, I'd like to ask this question. It's about the sarcophagus right now. The sarcophagus used in the number 4 unit. I think there is an initiative called New Safe Confinement, NSC, New Safe Confinement. I think you're trying to use this over the current sarcophagus. Now, based on the chart earlier, I think you want to create this new safe confinement by the year 2015. Well, actually, you want to complete by 2014, but the commissioning from 2015, I think that's what you have in mind for the new safe confinement. But then you have to take out, you're not going to take out the molten fuel from the unit. That's what you have in mind. You're not going to take out the molten fuel from the unit anymore.
Yes, you're right. In October of 2015, according to our plan, according to our contract, which this construction has been built, the French company's consortium, we will have a new secure confinement shelter. But there are the reasons which within the frames of this confinement during few we will keep on for a while the monitoring of the melted fuel, because according to the Ukraine law, we should keep only in geological formations, stable geological formations, we can keep their melted fuel. We don't have it right now in Ukraine. So plus there are a huge financial burden because we need a lot of money for the projects like that. Now in the containment we have 95% of melted fuel of the original amount. We know very well where it is located there, and we know the condition of that fuel. And in the nearest future, we will keep only monitoring of what is going on inside this containment facility. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So what kind of monitoring are you conducting? Is that on underground water?
The monitoring which we have, so we are checking the condition of construction material. We also have nuclear monitoring to see the condition of the fuel mass. We have also radioactive monitoring in order to follow their influence of this into condition of people working there. So I also had hydro conditions, for example, their soil, waters, underground waters condition. There's some seismic condition checking, control, some other physical access control. That's of course physical nuclear security of the containment facility, and so the systems are in fulfilling right now. They are working, they're active, all these systems, and we are trying to make it more safe. We're constructing the new containment facility, as we already mentioned. So thank you.
I have another question, if I may. In Ukraine, how many reactors of nuclear power plants do you have, and what is the share of nuclear power generation in terms of all power generation? So what is the dependence on nuclear energy?
In Ukraine, there are 4 nuclear power plants. And on these 4 nuclear power plants, we produce about 50% of an electric energy of the total electric energy produced in Ukraine. In case of Chernobyl, the reactors type was different. They were canal with a graphite core. Now on our nuclear power station we have different. It's a contrast system. So it's water reactors, which considered to be safe. That there is a containment. Containment vessel is much more durable, which can protect against.
Thank you very much. After the accident at Fukushima, what has been the response of your public to the Fukushima nuclear accident? Was there rise in opposition toward nuclear power in the Ukraine after the Fukushima nuclear power accident, or that's not the case?
Thank you. We have, by the way, I have to add 15 nuclear reactors we have in our country. And as for this question about their population reaction, so the first public initiatives were not against nuclear power generation, but how to assist Japan, to help Japan during hard times. And I saw that very many people, we have 10,000 people who were affected by Chernobyl, so they were writing special petitions in order to help Japan, to assist Japan in overcoming the Fukushima power plant accident consequences. That was the first reaction. And the reaction of population of Ukraine to Fukushima was really not influenced the situation inside our country as related to nuclear power generation. As I mentioned already before, maybe about 48% were against, 52 were for nuclear power generation, but maybe it changed just a little bit, 50-50. And now on our agenda we just cannot live without the nuclear power generation. But now on the agenda is the question of the safety of the measures and the nuclear power station itself for in order to secure their safe production, nuclear power plant production.
Mr. Tanaka, so we are out of time, so we will just raise the question. You have been talking about decontamination of soil and also to make sure that there is no internal exposure to radiation in human bodies. What about the radioactive substances which have already entered human bodies? And I think you already have a quarter of a century experience with measures to try to reduce the level of radiation which has already entered the human body. The only measure I know is pectin. And if you can elaborate on further measures, maybe after the Commission meeting, we'd very much appreciate it.
I know that we have a lagging of time. Yeah, we have recommendations depending on the geochemical state of the soil, depending on the traditional of farming, of countermeasures in the farmlands and agricultural sector. And so IAEA also has recommendations in late 80s, beginning of 90s. We have a big experience already, and maybe on the bilateral basis we can give you these recommendations, and we have a specialized organs which are working on that. Well, all recommendations that must be specific. So first of all, in order, we have to study where we can apply this recommendation. If it's regarding the agricultural sector in Japan, then we have to estimate, first of all, assess the real conditions of contamination. And then we should study how is the migration is going on, how lateral migration is taken on. So all these points, for each sector, for each village, we have a different, separate project, specific project. Let's say we have over 300 towns, villages in this area. So for each of them, we have a specific project developed. So I think in Japan, probably that's the way to go. That's based on this experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that we have not yet exhausted our questions, but I'm afraid the time has come to conclude today's commission. We would like to thank Mr. HOLOSHA, Mr. TABACHNYI, and Mr. Gora for your attendance today. We very much appreciate your sharing with us your expertise over the past 26 years. You talked about the transitions along the way. You also talked about some of the possible practical solutions. So we received valuable input from all of you. As Mr. Oshima mentioned, the members of this commission will be visiting your country in April. So we hope that we'll be able to talk about our homework, and I'm sure we can talk about our bilateral cooperation going forward on that occasion. We'll be able to exchange views at that time. Now, as to the information that we received today, we will continue on with our investigation at the Commission based on your information. The next Commission meeting is scheduled to take place toward the end of March. And we will provide announcement about the next Commission meeting later on. So we would like to conclude today, and thank you so much for your kind attendance and for traveling such a long distance to be with us. We would like to conclude today's Commission meeting at this juncture. Thank you very much.
Спасибо и вам. Приглашаем вас в Украину, членов комиссии. Спасибо. Только.
Thank you very much. This is an announcement to the media. Press conference will start from 6 p.m. in this room as scheduled. 6 p.m. press conference in this room as scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Я не выделял Украину.